I'm Steve Johnson, News Director of theDove TV. Watch more videos from the Dove Newsroom at thedove.us.
Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have back with us our good friend David Rubin, former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, and he's the founder and president of the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, which was established to assist terrorist victims and their children, actually after he and his son were wounded in the terror attack. He's an incredible blogger there at the Israel National News, and the author of quite a few books, and many of them are very good. In fact, The Islamic Tsunami is a must-read, and his latest book, you got to get a copy of it, Sparks from Zion. So we want to talk to him today about the proposed deal between the United States and Iran. David, good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you, Perry.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, listen, a lot going on, and as you can imagine here, it's not a done deal with the Congress over the Israeli negotiations, the Iran negotiations over the nuclear weapons. What's the take there in Israel?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. There's virtually nobody in Israel who believes that this deal with Iran over their nuclear program is a good deal. And you could look at the right of the political spectrum, the left of the political spectrum, the center of the political spectrum. There is virtually no person in Israel who believes that this deal is a good deal and that it should be signed. Virtually nobody here believes that the Iranians have abandoned their intention to destroy Israel, and therefore nobody's in favor of this agreement.
You're actually calling the deal an existential threat to Israel. Is that true?
Oh, there's not even a question about that. It is absolutely an existential threat to Israel. All you have to do is look at the elements that are in this agreement, and you see that any common sense thinking person, anyone who has a modicum of thought left in his brain would not agree that this is a good deal. There's virtually nothing in this agreement that is not to the benefit of Iran. They're looking to get money. They're looking to get big money, and they're going to have it from this agreement. The removal of sanctions gives them billions of dollars instantly. And we know what they do with those billions of dollars. They don't try to improve the quality of the bread that people put on their tables. They don't put it into having more produce and better produce in the supermarkets. What they do when they have money is that they give it to terrorist organizations and they use it to build nuclear weapons. That is the intent of the Iranians. They say when they speak in their language, they say that that's their intent. I say we should stop believing them.
You know, it's been very interesting on this side, David, to see that our government would give money to an enemy to turn around and kill us and kill you. It makes no sense, and yet it's being propagated as bringing peace to that part of the world. Does anybody in that region believe it?
Well, I don't think that anyone believes it, frankly. I mean, when you ask that question, I think of the Hezbollah terrorists or Bashar Assad in Syria, who are allies of Iran. But I don't think they believe that it's going to bring peace either. They know that it's not going to bring peace, and they don't care. They want to have more terrorism in the area. They want to increase the bedlam in the area. So they're very happy to have this agreement. It'll enable them to increase the terrorism. It'll enable them to support the various terrorist groups. You know, I'm just amazed that anyone would be suckered in by such an agreement. You know, if I was looking to hide something, well, I certainly wouldn't invite inspectors to come into my home and to do a search. I wouldn't encourage the police to come into my home if there was something that I had to hide. But in this situation, the Iranians obviously are trying to hide something. They're saying that they're not building nuclear bombs, but the proof is in the pudding. If they say that 24 hours, that if they said that 24 hours is the amount of time that they need to be warned in advance before nuclear inspectors come into their facilities, well, I would say, well, that might be okay. That might be a good deal. But they're being given 24 days before nuclear inspectors that come in to inspect their nuclear facilities. Well, in 24 days you can hide a lot, and so it's absolutely absurd. The facts of this agreement, it's going to fuel an arms race throughout the Middle East. The other countries, not just Israel. Yes, it's an existential threat to Israel because we're a tiny country that is, maybe a fifth of the size of Oregon. But if you look at the other countries in the Middle East, that's where it gets really interesting. You see Saudi Arabia, which is a huge country, which is terrified of the Iranians getting a nuclear bomb, and they are very strongly against this agreement, and which really says a lot. I mean, whatever I think of Saudi Arabia, whatever I think of their ideology or their social policies or how they treat people who don't follow their limits, their way of life. They're no better than Iran in that. But Saudi Arabia is terrified because they're Sunni Muslims. The Iranians are Shiite Muslims, and Sunnis and Shiites don't get along. So Saudi Arabia is secretly in consultation with Israel to find out what they can do to help Israel to stop Iran. And that's where it really gets interesting.
Yeah, that is amazing. Is that a coalition that could be trusted?
Well, look, politics is the art of what you're able to accomplish, and so in a case like this, the Saudi Arabians are willing to, they're willing to cooperate with what they see as the devil, which is Israel. They're willing to cooperate with anyone that will save their kingdom. And so at this point, I mean, we haven't seen the concrete cooperation in terms of direct action against Iran yet at this point. But what's interesting is that Saudi Arabia, which is, in the past has been a very good friend of Obama, and they've helped Obama in many ways, and Obama bowed down to the former king of Saudi Arabia, who passed away since then. So despite all that, they are very much against the Obama administration on this agreement, and they are with Israel.
Part of that would be, wouldn't it be airspace access? I mean, if Israel decides to go in and do some kind of a military strike against the nuclear facilities there in Iran, they would have to fly over Saudi Arabia to get it there, so it'd have to be kind of somewhat of an airspace agreement, wouldn't it?
That's correct. The agreement would have to include something relating to airspace. We have to remember again that Israel is a tiny country, and so someone in the United States could understand it if I say that we're about the size of New Jersey, roughly. And a country the size of New Jersey doesn't have that much airspace. And if you want to launch a preemptive strike against a country like Iran, with which you don't share a border, you have to fly over other countries. And Saudi Arabia is a nice big country, and yes, that actually would make a lot of sense. if such an agreement could be reached. Obviously, any agreement that would be reached, any cooperation that would be reached between Israel and Saudi Arabia, or a country like Saudi Arabia, that would have to be done secretly, because in the Islamic world, it's absolutely a no-no to have a good relationship with Israel.
All right, let me take a quick break. We'll be back, but let me just say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to ShilohIsraelChildren.org. You can go to DavidRubinIsrael.com and check out his books. And let me encourage you to prayerfully consider supporting the Shiloh Israel Fund. It's an outstanding organization that helps children. So we'll be right back with David Rubin in just a moment. Okay, we're back with our good friend David Rubin. We're Skyping him in from Israel. He's the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, and he's the founder and the president of the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. And this was established to assist terrorist victims, especially children, of which he and his son, young son, were wounded as in an act of terror themselves. He's the author of many books, and you may want to check out a couple of them. The Islamic Tsunami, which is an incredible resource, and his latest book called Sparks from Zion. And you can also follow him. He's a pretty prolific blogger at Israel National News. We're talking to him today from Israel about what's going on with the proposed plan or agreement between the United States and Iran. David, given everything we've discussed so far, what do you think Israel's response going to be if this thing is signed and agreed upon by the Congress?
Well, I think that there are really two questions. There's the question of what Israel's response will be, and the question of what Israel's response should be. Now, I think as far as what it will be, it's very possible that there will be continued political action, a lot of consultation between Israel and the Congress. I know that the Obama administration is feverishly working to try and ensure that it has the ability to veto any decision by Congress to strike down this agreement. And Congress, of course, there are members of Congress that are trying very hard to ensure that there is a veto-proof majority against the agreement in Congress. But even so, even if Congress manages to reject the agreement, and even if Obama cannot veto that agreement, I think that there is a problem here. Because this agreement wasn't just with the United States. The agreement was with Russia and China and the United Kingdom, several other countries. And these countries are already lining up and making deals with Iran for them it's a business deal, but for Israel, it's an existential danger. And even if Congress strikes down the deal, I think that those other countries aren't going to be on board as far as increasing sanctions once again. So the Iranians are going to be getting billions of dollars either way. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that the Congress shouldn't strike down the deal. Of course, everything should be done to try and get Congress to stop this agreement. But if Congress is not successful in totally stopping the agreement, I still think that the military action has to be explored, and obviously there should not be any military action unless Israel believes that it's going to be successful. And of course there's no guarantee of that, but we have some very knowledgeable people here in Israel when it comes to military, when it comes to military intelligence. And I hope that they will be as competent as they need to be, because I suspect that no matter what happens in Congress, the military option is going to be the only option. And sometimes the military option is a good option.
Now, I think most people agree with that and support it, but I think you need to remind our listeners that if Israel decides that a military strike is the only option, it's not a matter of just getting clearance to go over Saudi Arabia's airspace to do the strike, but at the same time and simultaneously, you're going to have to protect the rest of your borders from those who would be upset with you doing that. I mean, it's more than just an airstrike.
That's correct. Well, it's a multi-site airstrike. If that has to happen, there are about, well, at least 5 sites in Iran that are major nuclear research sites, and those are the sites that would need to be hit, and they're spread out around the country. So it wouldn't just be attacking one specific nuclear reactor. In Iraq, about 30 years ago, Israel destroyed a nuclear reactor. In Syria, about 5 years ago, Israel destroyed a nuclear reactor. But it was a pinpoint strike, and that was enough. Here we're talking about a lightning strike that would be needed, a massive lightning strike in several locations. And that's not such an easy thing to do. So it would be nice to have at least passive American support in such an operation, because the United States does have some military equipment that Israel doesn't have.
The other day, one of the presidential candidates, former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, he's one of the 17 running, you know that, he made an interesting comment that this deal, this proposed deal with Iran, would march Israel to the oven's door. And it got a lot of pushback, and yet it also got a lot of support. How did you respond to it, and how does Prime Minister Netanyahu respond to that comment?
Well, I didn't hear any comments from the Prime Minister, but I can tell you what I think about it. Obviously, former Governor Huckabee was referring to the ovens in which millions of Jews were killed, and specifically 1 million who were killed just in the Auschwitz concentration camp alone during the Holocaust. And so some people thought that it was an overreaction, an exaggeration that should never be said. Some people say you should never cite the Holocaust. Well, look, the Holocaust was an event in history like no other. And 6 million Jews were murdered simply for being who they are. And I think that what's essential, even though we should be cautious about what kind of language we use when referring to the Holocaust or citing the Holocaust to refer to something else, it is an event in history like no other. And here we are talking about a similar event. It's not a careless use of imagery. It is a similar event that the Iranians would like to carry out. The only difference between what the Iranians would like to do to us right now by getting a nuclear bomb and what the Nazis did to us is that the Nazis had to carry it out over a period of about 6 years. The Iranians could do it in just one day if they're successful at it. They could destroy Israel in just one day with a nuclear bomb. So I think that the statement of Governor Huckabee was right on target. I think that it's making it very clear that there is an existential danger, as I've been saying over and over. It is an existential danger to the very survival of Israel. And I think that those who were blasting him and those who were criticizing him, well, I think they were mainly doing it for political reasons. They don't want to see him rise in the polls in the Republican Party or have a significant position of any kind in the Republican Party. But he's a great friend of Israel.
It's unbelievable to us in the faith community in the United States that we have a runaway presidency. We have a weak Congress that doesn't seem to keep it in check. We are in constitutional crises. And the message that we're sending to Israel is, we really aren't for you. We're willing to make a deal where your enemy could wipe you out in one day, as you just mentioned. Is there any indication coming from the United States to Israel that the majority of the faith community is not with this decision?
Well, it seems like the Republican Party is very strongly against the agreement. The Republican Party actually is the right wing of the spectrum and the more religious wing of the political spectrum in the United States. I am going to be very interested in watching the Republican candidates debate on Thursday. I hope that there will be a question in there about Israel, and I hope there'll be a question in there about the Iran deal. And I would like to hear some substance coming from those candidates. One thing that I have heard from Huckabee over time is a lot of substance. He speaks very strongly in favor of Israel. He speaks against the Palestinian state, which would just be another Islamic terrorist state in the heartland of Israel. He speaks against Israel giving away parts of its biblical heartland. I've been very pleased with a lot of things that I've heard from Huckabee. I'd like to hear it from the other candidates. I'd like to hear it from Trump. I'd like to hear from Rubio, from Rand Paul, from Jeb Bush, from Scott Walker. I'd like to hear that they stand with Israel and Israel's territorial integrity, that they're against giving away parts of Israel, dividing the land, which we know is something that's forbidden biblically, and we also know that it would be a big mistake politically for Israel to do. So I'm going to be watching very carefully, and I will be writing about it and speaking about it afterwards.
And I'll be glad to have you back quickly after that, just to hear your comments. David, thank you. You're always a delight to have. Our prayers continue to be with you, my friend. And let me encourage our viewers and listeners, there's several ways you can communicate with him and get his books. Look for his books there. They are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The two that I recommend, at least, he's got a lot of them, but the two that you may want to pick up right away is The Islamic Tsunami, and then his latest book, Sparks from Zion. You can go to shilohisraelchildren.org. You can communicate with him with davidrubinisrael.com. So, David, thanks, my friend. Let's stay in touch, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you, Barry.
All right, God bless. We'll be right back.